Welcome to Painting with Yuk-Sem. My name is Yuk-Sem Won, and I'm going to be bringing you step by step through an acrylic painting of a lilac in front of a windowsill. We're going to be using acrylic paints, and I will be showing you what colors, shapes, and some tips and tricks for the techniques with the paintbrush in order to get your desired effect. So let's get started. I'm actually grabbing with a flat brush. It's a 1-inch brush in order to do the background. I'm grabbing some titanium white and I'm mixing it on my brush with a little bit of the neutral gray. I start in the center and bring it out so that I'm dividing my canvas not only in half, but also giving me my focal point there. The reason I use neutral gray with the titanium white is to really try and get that white feeling without it just being a white canvas. So I'm spreading a fairly thick layer of the paint, and that's so that I can blend the colors now that I'm coming in. I can start blending them to get that nice uniform stroke. So when you're trying to blend colors, the direction of your brush really matters. If I was to go across, the brush stroke is very different and you get a very different effect. Because I'm doing the windowsill here, what I want is to have that nice vertical line with some coverage to give me some height on the side. The gray in the corner here and a little bit in this corner will actually let me play with getting some depth on it. The corner of the windowsill, I'm just adding some straight white in order to break the line, and then adding the gray to give it that shadow. Now I'm using my brush strokes diagonally to show that it's the windowsill that's coming through. So it's giving you that perspective even though we don't have the depth in the painting. Now that the windowsill is done, the edge of it, I'm just going to grab a little bit of the black in with that mix of the gray. I haven't washed my brush yet, and I'm going to add a bit of that black. If you find that your paint is actually not blending or it's smearing on the canvas and you're seeing the canvas through, the joy of acrylic paints is that you can just add a bit of water and it will thin it out enough for the paint to be able to go through and mix into the canvas, especially if you have a rugged surface. So it ends up going in between all the bumps in the canvas. I'm just rinsing out my brush a little bit, and then I'm going to come in now with a clean brush and paint over that line. And because the paint is already wet, what it ends up doing is grabbing not only that gray color, but it grabs a little bit of the white and makes it blend right on the canvas, which is a wet on wet technique that is really helpful for blending. Acrylics do dry fast, so you end up getting, you have about 15-minute work time. The wall behind, or beside the window, is going to be a little bit yellow. And the reason we're doing that is because the lilac arrangement is going to be purple. And yellow is a complementary color to that purple, so it'll make it stand out. So what I've done is I have some yellow, and I'm mixing it right on the brush with the black. And once again, because it's wet on wet, I will be able to blend that in as I paint. I'm adding a little bit of water, which will help really bring it and hide that canvas. In the bottom right, left-hand corner, I'm trying to make it darker a little bit. So I'm using a bit more black in that corner, just to be able to get that depth of the room, where the closer to the window is going to have a little bit more yellow. Oh, not the green. As I paint, I'm trying to blend in the colors so that I don't have any streaks, but I still have a bit of a striation in the color. So I know that there's a little bit more, a darker area here and the lighter area there. Under the window here, there's a little piece of the wall, and because it's completely in the shadow, what we end up doing is making that one line very dark because it's in the shadow, and that's going to give you the impression of that wall that's underneath the windowsill. For the table, I'm using the yellow ochre again. This part of the table is actually in the light of the shadow, so it's a straight edge that's horizontal, and I made it so that it matched the horizontal line there. And then I'm just going to add a bit of the black into that yellow ochre and cover the bottom of that table. If you see that your paint is actually not covering your canvas because you've added water, all you have to do is go and grab some of the straight paint and add it, and it'll blend in. So those are the two things that people have problem, or some of the things that when you're starting with acrylics, is to find out what is that perfect consistency or ratio of water to paint. So the tablecloth I'm doing horizontally in order to get that length. This area is going to be in shadow, so I'm going to go and get a little bit of that dark, and I'm going to do it on a diagonal line to try and show that it's a different, not only a different color, but that you can get that different area that we can cover from the windowsill. The light's coming in, it's not hitting the end of the table here because of the windowsill, but then it does hit it in order to go more into the table. I'm just going to smooth out those lines, get one last pass on that shadow, and the table is done. Behind the table here, because of the window and the wall, the way that I'm going to delineate that is to show that there's a little bit of a curtain. So I'm taking a little bit of yellow ochre and I'm blending it right on my brush with some white. And I'm going to paint a vertical line. What I do is that I end up turning my brush a little bit just to be able to get a bit of a point when it comes down to the bottom. I'm going to go get some more of the paint on the brush. So there's two ways, or don't forget that your brush is a tool that you can actually turn. So you don't have to just use it in the one way. The nice thing about having the paint on your brush is that you can actually use that to your advantage to spread the paint. As I get closer to the window, these ones are going to be lighter. As I go into the room, they're going to be a little bit darker. So with the same brush, I haven't washed it yet, it has that yellow and white on it. I'm just adding a bit of black, which will give me, it'll blend on the canvas and actually starts putting in those shadows. All I'm doing is going vertically down and towards that point in the middle, and I'm keeping some of those black striations just to show the shadows. And the curtain is almost done. I'm just going to add a bit of a highlight on the right. So I'm going to grab just wash the brush and just the titanium, and the closest fold to the window is going to be the whitest. I'm just going to add a bit of a highlight. So you have the light, a bit of the curtain, and some light again. This is the shadow of the fold, the color of the curtain, and then the highlight. Shadow of the fold, the curtain, and then the highlight. Shadow of the fold, the highlight, shadow, curtain, and a bit of a highlight. And at every single stroke goes from a wider top down into a point, and that'll give you that nice effect of a curtain. In order to get the flower arrangement for the lilacs, what we're going to do is we're going to start working, and the canvas is still wet, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the bottom of the pot in a nice curved shape. I'm going to bring the pot up and just decide what angle I want the edge of it to be. This one's going to be a little bit of a metal milk container. So I just end up getting that shape. Because the paint is still wet and it's a metal container, we want it to reflect a little bit of the color of the table. So having the wet paint underneath is actually to my advantage. I just have black. What's happening is that the brush is actually picking up some of that yellow and is going to bring it in to the colors on the pot. So you end up getting that reflection without really ever having to work at it too much. Because the light is coming in on the right, this side's going to be lighter. The back of it, the black is to my advantage. So now for the window side, I'm going to, without washing my brush, I go and grab some white, and I'm going to start on the side and bring it in. The key to getting that roundness is not to go horizontally. You have to have that curve to it that will give you the impression of roundness. And that's another trick, is that if ever something's round, try and follow that same type of brush stroke and direction. I want to put a little bit of a lip on this. I'm grabbing a little bit of the gray and the black. The spout of the milk jug is just a little triangle on at the top there. So I'm going to wash my 1-inch brush. Now I'm going to use a round brush to try and get some of the details. So it's a fairly big one. I'm going to go right into the white and with a bit of gray, and I'm going to draw that a handle on it, which is just a backwards S. So I'm using that neutral gray because that'll give the impression of it being silver. And you do any type of handle or no handle at all. I like the handle, it gave a little bit more design, something for the eye to look at. Here, the light is coming in on, again, on the right. So on the left, the way to get that depth is to add some shadow. So all I'm doing is adding some black to the inside of to the left-hand side of that handle. Now that I have the black on my brush, I'm going to go get a bit more, and I'm going to just add one line of black, not quite on the edge of the pot, and just bring in a little bit of that reflection. I'm going to use my brush that's still got the same gray on it, add a bit of white to it, and on the edge of the pot, that's the light that's actually from the room over there and reflecting on the pot. Right here at the bottom will be black, but there's a little bit of reflection there, and now I can get into the bigger reflection. So on this side, it's a white reflection from the light there. The same with the edge of the pot. Handle. Is adding that nice bright highlight of white. On this edge, what happens is that you're going to see a little bit of a reflection of the window ledge. So what I end up doing is drawing a little bit of, following the edge. I'm just going to add a bit of white. I still want to see the pot through it, but I want it to give the impression of that's the window edge. The window here is a little bit darker for the windowsill, so I'll do that. And then we have the wall, which is a blacker. And the same thing with the edge of the wall. And I'm going to grab just a bit of the ochre to show that that's the table. I'm bringing a little bit of that ochre right up to where that table will be. And I'm assuming that on the other side of the window, there's also going to be the same type of curtains. So without too much detail, I'm just adding a hint of lines. So darker on this side, lighter by the window, which shows that reflection. To add the shadows to the pot, all I do is create that black line that runs at the bottom and a triangle. The thing with shadows is that you want your black to be liquid enough and have enough water in it to really be able to see the color of the table, because a shadow isn't truly black. And now we're going to get into painting the lilacs. Lilacs, what I'm using is the purple. And lilacs are nice and fun to paint because all you have to do is start dabbing with that purple. And when I'm dabbing, it's actually creating, because I'm using a round brush, it's actually creating the shape of the lilac as it is, without too much effort. All you have to do is decide, I'm going to have one right there, one there, and maybe we'll do 4 or 5. So I'm adding the purple. And it's just a straight purple, no color in it. But because it's going to be wet and it's going to stay wet, we'll actually be able to use that to our advantage once again. And because this background is dark and this one's light, you're already starting to get those natural highlights that are going to happen of having a lighter or darker shade of the lilac bush. I'm going to add one more down here, and I'm dabbing, and it's giving me some areas with darker paint, some areas with lighter paint that we need. I'm going to grab some white and mix it to the purple to get a bit of a lighter purple. So now we're starting to get into the lilac. And on your brush, you can have a little bit of the dark, a little bit of the white, and that's fine. So what I'm going to start doing is dabbing on the right-hand side of each of the clusters of flowers. The way to know which side, and when you're thinking about your painting, where is the light coming from? And what is it going to hit? So with the dark purple, you wanted to cover really the background. With this medium purple, you just want to see where the light is coming and leave some areas of that purple behind. That will give you some depth and some shadow. Same thing down here. I'm just adding. Right now they look really clumpy. So the way that we're going to change that is that with your same brush, it's going to be clean now, but you're just going to grab your white and it'll pick up some of the yellow, some of that purple. So what I'm going to do is add flowers. So the lilac is actually a 4-petaled flower, but not every petal has to have 4. So what we're doing is adding some with 1 petal, some that's just a bud, and trying to get just that white on the edges where the light's hitting, and keeping that dark space there. So I just keep on adding white. It'll grab some of that purple and make it a really nice blend going into some of where the sun is actually hitting, keeping those dark areas. Every once in a while, you can have one of those light areas that's coming through. And remember, the way that you don't have to make every single one a 4-petaled flower, as long as every once in a while your eye is drawn to one that does. Now that we have our flowers, I'm going to go into the magenta. I'm just going to add a bit of black because the magenta itself is very bright. So I'm adding a bit of magenta with the black, and I'm going to come and the closed lilac bush, the flowers, are actually a little bit more of just a ball. They don't have that 4 petals as much, but they're that dark magenta. So if you just add a couple, it'll actually pull in the color and highlight some of those areas that might have not opened yet. With a bit of the black, I'm just going to do the same thing so that it gives me a bit of that shadow underneath and behind. And lastly, I'm going to add a bit of white to get that pink, so the white with the magenta, and just highlight a few of those buds. This one here is mostly behind, so it's just the top of it that's going to have some of that highlight. With the cadmium green, I'm going to go in and add a bit of black to get a nice dark shade of green. And to add leaves, all we have to do is paint more or less the shape of an eye. And that'll give you, by adding a few leaves, especially in the dark green, will just break up the area a little bit. Now I'm going to add some light, just a straight cadmium green, and where the light's going to be hitting, I'm just going to add a few details on the sides, on the right hand side again, because we're trying to do those highlights of the leaves. Over here, I'm just going to add one of those bright leaves, a couple of them that are there, that are shooting off the sprigs. Every once in a while you can just add a little bit of green that's peeking through some of the stems. The way to make this look realistic is now that you are not only reflecting the table, but you're also reflecting a little bit of that lilac arrangement. So with a watered down purple, I'm just going to come in and add some really watered down purple onto the jar, onto the canister. And the same thing with the green, is I'm going to take a watered down dark green and paint the reflection of those leaves. And that'll give you that nice impression of having that reflection in it. Now, in order to do the shadow a little bit better, I'm just going into a dark, a watered down black, and where that shadow is, I'm just adding that watered black, so you're still seeing the yellow through it. I'm going to add a little bit of shadow with that watered down black, underneath these two clusters. I'm going to add a little bit more shadow to this side. And because we have that yellow table shining through here, I'm going to add just a little bit of highlight yellow to the edge. To finish it off, you can always use your small detail brush. So it's the little ones. And that's when you can come in and actually add a couple of the little flowers so that you have a lot of detail on a few of them. So thank you for painting with me, and I hope that you have fun and really give it a try. Painting isn't that hard once you get the hang of what you can do. I'm looking forward to painting with you again. Thanks.